Good morning from the bunker in Las Vegas, Nevada, where we're all hiding out from a coronavirus these days. COVID-19, if you're classy. But the show must go on. There's lots of content being made all around the internet by lots of talented people. And one of the great things, one of the great fortunes that I have in my life is that I get to meet and talk with super awesome, talented people. And to that end, I'm going to be able to bring you today one Mr. Tom Devlin, makeup effects artist. And I have him connected right now. So let's say hello. Good morning, Tom. How are you?
Hey guys, good. How's it going?
It's going pretty great. So thanks for joining us this morning, and we'll jump right into it. We were talking about a bunch of stuff as we were kind of warming up to record the interview, and one of the things that jumped out immediately, and I want to kind of start everything with, is your museum. Tell me a little bit about this because I'm going to bring up the titles right now so people can see who you are and where you're from, but what's going on with the Monster Museum and what should people be paying attention to today dealing with COVID and everything else?
So the Monster Museum itself is our goal. The prime objective is to preserve the history effects. So everything within the museum is a one-of-a-kind work of art, mostly made by myself or some of my team members. And the thing that's really weird about this COVID is we depend on tourism. So we were just
Uh-huh.
entering our spring break time. We had a phenomenal week. We thought, oh my gosh, this is it, man. We're in our third year now. Our popularity has gained so much. We get a lot of travelers coming solely to the Monster Museum, and then they asked us to close the doors. So without those patrons, there is no, it's been I have 3 weeks of since the doors have been shut, and it's weird. It's a really weird thing to not have people there all the time.
And people who are
But
joining or are watching right now, to I might think I'm putting the cart before the horse by asking you about that up front, because we were talking about a number of
right,
things, and we're going to get to a bunch of things in a minute, but to me that felt like the most urgent thing to bring up is that we're everyone, I know everyone's dealing with it different ways, and a lot of business are affected, but a lot of these treasures really are at risk. And what are you looking at, the things that you have to do to kind of mitigate this challenge?
well, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand, and even when the museum's open regularly and they walk through the door and they're like, $15, yeah, right, and they walk out, and I'm like, well, we do have to pay. We have overhead, employees, we have insurance, we have a lot of stuff. I mean, I have one item there that we have a sole insurance policy on because it's priceless. It's the
Oh wow.
spider gremlin from Gremlins 2.
Oh wow.
So it is there are things that we our overhead depends on our foot traffic, and as soon as we had to close those doors, now there's relief plans in motion, but they are not active yet. We've applied
Sure.
for the SBA loans, but they're not active yet. And of course, this happened 2 weeks before the rest of the month. Landlords. My landlord is a sweetheart. She is a wonderful person. But she has to pay her bills too. I mean, this
Sure.
was all a trickle effect. She's not evil because she needs to get paid. That's what she does.
Right. I mean,
So
they got to keep the roof on the building at all, right?
exactly,
So or else the whole
exactly.
thing falls apart.
They have mortgages, and it's not my business where that we are contractually obligated to pay on the first to the sixth, and like you just said, it's the seventh, and I can guarantee you we haven't paid yet. But it's coming. And what we did is we launched a GoFundMe, and just I listen, I have a hard time with the whole GoFundMe Kickstarter avenue of making films and creating your dreams on somebody else's dollar. It's a weird thing. It's very hard for me to get up with the times that some people want to do this. They want to be a helping hand, or they want to be a part of it. They want to help pay for your short film. I'm from an older school world where we like pound the pavement to come up with those funds, or find the
Sure.
investors, or legitimate film investors. But I've my eyes have been opened because we put a GoFundMe up just because the SBA recommended we do so based on our type of business. And within 2 days, we had like over $1,000. I mean, I think we're at like 1240 right now. So that's half of
Amazing.
rent, and it's crazy because I'd say 60% of those people I don't even know. And then 20% of them are people I haven't spoken to like since high school.
Well,
So it's a really,
the hope is that a lot of those people who are fans and who are, friends of the industry, or that are out there over the internet, that kind of like see the fact that these things are in danger, and that the fans can really step in and do something about it. I think that's you cast a wide net, you're going to get a lot of folks who really empathize with the position, and do something about it. And certainly, I think, it takes a lot of humility to kind of do something like that as well, and being put in this position.
yeah. And I think that at the end, when this is all wrapped up, anybody who has donated to that fund, I will definitely do something out of my way for it. I don't know if it's make them a t-shirt, enamel pins, I saved the Monster Museum, something like that. Because I don't believe we would have got evicted or thrown out on our butts. But to come back after all this dry spell and be super in debt would
Mm.
would be really tough to get back ahead, because if it depends on how much it cuts into the summer. The summer is our prime time. So
Well,
people think October, and October is great, but the summer is our busy season.
Well, I'll tell you what. When this thing kind of clears up a little bit and we can all get out of the doors, I will drive by Nick's place, who introduced us, Nick Benson. I will drive by his place and pick him up, and we'll come visit you, and we'll put some things on turntables and stuff. We'll make some video assets, or however I can help you with that. I will absolutely make sure that you can kind of have something that can be more displayable over the internet, or bring in different ways of viewing the material, so that we can make sure that
We
that preservation effort is maintained. Anything that I can do to help out.
bringing bringing up Nick. When we do reopen, we're going to have a big grand reopen party, and we have Lisa Wilcox from Nightmare on Elm Street 4,
Oh, awesome.
and we have we're going to bring Nick Benson out, who did effects on Nightmare as well, and we're going to have some original props. I have a collector friend who has original props from Part 4. We'll have out there for photo ops, and I'm going to set up a cool Freddy photo op. So we'll have like raffles and fun. We're just going to do a huge party. We usually do like a July anniversary party that kicks off really awesome for our summers. So I think we're just going to roll this grand reopening idea, and maybe have a movie night along with it or something.
Sure.
So we'll kick it out of the park when we're allowed to open those doors again.
Well, that's great. I hope folks who are tuning in to check out your story and talk and hear more about you and what you do are sympathetic, and they can check out the GoFundMe. I will put a graphic up here and show you where to put it, and also look in the comments on the YouTube posting so that you can see a link to that if you want to help out. In the meantime,
We also
though,
have
yeah,
we've put some new T-shirts up on our website as well, to try to help sell some stuff from online. So I'll give you a link for the T-shirt shop as well, and it's got like tote bags and shirts and hoodies and whatever. But there's definitely some stuff there that can help.
yeah, and who knew that it was going to be the horror genre that took everything out is going to be the disease porn one.
Yeah,
So
28 days later, knew that.
yeah, they knew, Contagion knew, but
Yeah.
we wanted to see something else. I kind of was hoping for a Mad Max style
Oh
apocalypse.
yeah.
I mean, who
Well,
who
that could
wasn't?
come. I mean, that could come afterwards.
Right.
We could get there. You
But then,
know.
but I got to survive first. That's the trouble. Uh,
Yeah.
so tell me about some of our movies. We were talking a little earlier about, a DIY makeup effects career. And we talked from even in the big movies, they need small but very accurate effects. And then you've got very effects heavy laden films, and you've done them all. How did you get started, and what kind of brought you into the effects makeup world?
So my entire life, I wanted to make monsters. I'm an '80s kid, a huge He-Man Masters of the Universe fan. So the He-Man characters is where my love for monsters comes from, because they did Beast and Moss. I just loved the character creation, specifically the Snake Men with King Hiss and Rattler. There was
Oh yeah.
really cool characters with He-Man, and He-Man segued into Ninja Turtles, and Ninja Turtles segued into something that completely changed my life, which was the Toxic Crusaders. A little known cartoon and smaller toy line, but they were to scale with the Ninja Turtle toys. So in the early 90s, the Toxic Crusaders were kind of the punk rock version of Ninja Turtles. I mean, they were grosser. They were talking about girls. There was, slime and pus and
Was that Trauma
glitter.
Films? Was that Trauma Films
It
property?
was, it
Okay,
was, and but before most of us 10-year-old kids knew that, we were being influenced by that. So I had, when I was 10, I had a Toxic Crusaders birthday party, and it was like my favorite birthday party I ever had. And my uncle brought me a tape of Toxic Avenger, the movie, which is I would hope most people know, but it's a completely rated R, like not for kids film.
no,
And he was like,
nothing Trauma
I'll
makes is necessarily for
right,
kids.
except for Toxic Crusaders. And I also had all the Toxic Crusader comics were out of this world. Sam Keith, who did the Max, did the cover art for #1.
Oh
And
wow,
I mean, I love Toxic Crusaders. So my uncle gives me this tape, and he's like, I've got a movie, and I'm going to distract your parents and check this out. And I had like two of my best buddies there that spent the night, and we watched Toxic Avenger when we were 10 years old. And from that point on, it was like game on. Like this is a new
yeah.
level of cool.
You
Just
can get dirty. Like this is good.
yeah,
Yeah.
horrifically violent, uh, babes and blood, and then this awesome monster hero that very much like the comics and Toxic Crusaders. Toxie's a good guy. He's gross, but he's a good guy,
Right.
and I fell in love with that kind of anti-hero, mega, just disgusting, awesome
Well, that's kind of
bad
the
guy.
message.
So
That's the message of Toxic Avenger, right? Is that the good
yeah,
guy isn't necessarily have to be this chiseled jawed, beautiful hero, and sometimes he can stink and he can come from humble beginnings and like whatever. But it's who you are and what you do that matters and not what you look like.
right. And so I didn't know I wanted to be an effects artist, but I knew I wanted to make monsters. I really thought I wanted to be a comic book artist for a long time. But the repetitiveness of drawing the same characters over and over, I had no attention
Yeah.
span for that. And so early, I'd say about 10th or 11th grade, I was introduced to Tom Savini, the Grand Illusions books. And that just changed that was it. I was like, okay, cool. I can make these monsters. I don't need to draw them painstakingly. Like it was a chore to sit down and try to draw some pages of a comic book for me because it's the
Right.
same character over and over. What you don't learn from those Grand Illusion books or from any behind the scenes makeup tutorial is the repetitiveness is 100% worse than drawing comic books. Like you get
Yeah.
on a movie, let's say a big movie like The Grinch. Jim Carrey wore the same prosthetics for 93 days. The
Yep.
same makeup with the same exact spatter, the same detail, and that is insane. I mean, I did.
And even the performances, you do like 50 takes, of the
Oh
same
yeah,
thing over and over again.
and it's I'd say that's my biggest pet peeve. Like after my second run with the same look, I'm done. Like I don't want to do it again. So that you get involved with. I did a series called the Killjoy series. I did Killjoy 3, 4, and 5, and that was the same character in the same makeup, over and over and over to the point where like you could do it in your sleep, but at the same time it loses that like excitement. You already got your photo. Once I got the photo, I'm like, I'm done. And that's why I love the museum, so that I can make these awesome characters once and then put them in place and they're done. I don't have to reapply it over and over.
Right. Right.
But that being said, back to where I got started. So it was He-Man to Toxic Avenger, Tom Savini, and I met Tom Savini when I was about 14 years old, and maybe 15, and I said I want to do what you do, and he said you got to go to Hollywood and work at this, go to the school called Joe Blasco. That's
Uh,
that's how you become an effects artist. This is way before Tom Savini had his own school. And I don't know if he was associated with the Blasco School, but he definitely gave me some good info.
right.
And I was a Pennsylvania kid. He was from Pennsylvania. I was from Pennsylvania. So I never expected him to tell me to go to Los Angeles, New York, if anything, or
Well,
Pittsburgh or
it's funny
whatever.
and it's funny because there's I kind of came into creation. I do video making. I hate to even call it filmmaking
Yeah.
because I make videos and stuff. But like I got into this at a time when it was just transitioning over from film to digital. And it's funny because like when I was looking for mentors too at that time, And this, this kind of mirrors what you're talking about, is that, it was impossible at that time to find where you would actually learn a good school. And there were a lot of fakes out there. And there was a lot of schools that were like,
Right.
yeah, you're going to become a filmmaker, but you'd pay them a lot of money and you wouldn't actually get anything out of it. And you had to really find in your, like, just like your experience said, you had to find a mentor like Tom Savini. It says, here's exactly the spot you need to look. And no joke, these guys are legit. Go there, check it out. And that's kind of how you
Yeah.
get into the right kung fu school, as it were. And then everyone else is faking, and it's like, but now, everybody doesn't
And
realize how good they have it with YouTube.
exactly, exactly. And back then with makeup schools, there wasn't many. At that time, there was like 3 or 4 that were notable, but it was still a business. Like I got to makeup school to be an effects artist, and they told me, "Oh, you have to take the professional makeup artistry course," which sounds wonderful, but it
Right,
was just beauty makeup, like
right.
soap opera makeup, television makeup, clean makeup. I had to do 11 weeks of beauty before I was allowed to do anything effects related. And then so I did that gladly. I want to be a professional. I want to know it all, right? And then when it came time for the effects portion, they said, "Oh, there's nobody else signed up, so we're going to push that class." And I was like, "Okay, I'm a 19-year-old punk rocker that just wants to make monsters." And they're like, I said, "I'm going to go somewhere else and do it." And they said, "No, we'll give you an internship at a place called WM Creations, which was owned by Matthew Mungle." And I knew that name immediately. He had me award along with Greg Canham for Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I instantly was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll go take that internship." I went there and I worked my ass off for 2 weeks on my first show ever was X Files, and I worked for free for like 2 weeks. And then I got hired on there based on the work ethic or the passion, whatever it was. I wasn't talented by any means, and and then I stayed there for 2 years, and I worked on the biggest shows of my life. That's where the Red Dragon, Daredevil, Scorpion King was my first film. Terminator 3. I got to make an Arnold Schwarzenegger body for Terminator 3 as a kid. Like that was the coolest thing ever. I did multiple seasons of X Files and CSI Miami and like huge. I did my career completely backwards. I worked on the huge Hollywood stuff first, but at that time, I had no interest in working on CSI Miami, like or Charlie's Angels 2 or
Right,
Seabiscuit. Like these weren't what I wanted to make horror movies. I wanted to make Trauma and Full Moon,
right, because they're asking
the
you to do
stuff I
like
grew up on.
wounds and like bruises and stuff,
Yeah,
and you're like,
and a lot of dead bodies. I made a lot of dead body. I did mostly the urethane, silicone, and fiberglass work. So all the chemicals nobody wants to touch. They're like, "Yeah, the excited kid, he'll do it," And but it was cool because for years, 2 years, I worked on some of the biggest stuff I'll ever work on. It didn't mean anything. It didn't mean much to me then. I figured you just move to Hollywood, you work on movies. This is how it works, right? But that's not how it works. It's very hard to get your foot in the door, and then also to keep your foot in the door. So I worked there until uh, I think I did 14 feature films there, and then
oh
at
wow,
the end of 2 years, me and Matthew had a slight disagreement because I was a pompous asshole, and I thought that I deserved to be getting credit on these movies, which I was not getting credit on most of them. But I didn't understand the hierarchy and the politics of the position I was in. The credit was the fact that I got the opportunity to be on set with some of the greatest filmmakers of all time and get to work with people like Anthony Hopkins and stuff. I shouldn't be griping about a credit when I get to go on set and work with these awesome people, and so I learned a lot. And then we parted ways, and I ended up over at Rob Hall's Almost Human working on Buffy and Angel for just a little bit, not very long, just doing fiberglass molds, and then I started my own company in 2002 called 1313 Effects. And we kicked it off with a movie called Joshua that we shot in South Bend, Indiana. It ended up getting released by Fangoria. And that still to this day is probably the greatest experience and one of the best films I've ever worked on. It's not well known. Hopefully soon. I heard rumblings that it might end up on Shudder. So that would be really cool. But those filmmakers that I started that film Joshua with, it's a guy named Travis Betts and Drexel Box Productions. We've done countless films together, and they're incredibly talented. And we became a family that summer in 2002. So And from there I've done well over 100 films, mostly low budget direct to video and then direct to streaming. And now I work primarily for a company called Full Moon Features, which as a kid I was a huge fan of Puppet Master and the Castle Freak and Full Moon in general. So
Definitely.
to be
One
part of that Full Moon family is pretty cool.
one thing I'm kind of taking away from this too about talking about filmmaking and being a filmmaker for as a career, they always say about there's a thing going around about trade jobs, like don't always worry about that. You can get training as a trade job, and you can make a lot of money as a house builder, right? I think the same is true, and you can validate this. That I think in filmmaking, there's a lot of people who want to immediately be on these blockbuster films and make the biggest thing ever. And the reality is that you can make a very solid career and make a very wonderful body of work if you enjoy the work, then are willing to do it very often, and you work with a lot of the right people who are also passionate and like to just make the films. That's the most important part, right?
Well, and there's two types of success, right? There's financial success and there's emotional success. I was chasing a childhood dream that never had dollar bills attached to it. I wanted to work with my heroes. I wanted to become friends with Jason Voorhees. I wanted to work with Charles Band and Lloyd Kaufman and Stuart Gordon and these people that I idolized. So my emotional checklist was getting checked off from the time I was 19 on, just boom, 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 boom. And it's not until now in my late 30s that I'm like, all right, it's time to really make a solid living. And I have to say, even on those huge budget films where I got to do amazing things, I didn't make much more money than I do doing the independent world. But the independent world was a lot more work when it comes to, I didn't have somebody telling me what to do. I didn't
Right,
show up and have a list like, here's your list. This is what you do. I had to look at a script and go, okay, if I want the film to be good, I have to spend all the money here. If I
right.
want to pay rent, I have to put some of that money over here,
Yeah, and
So,
there's not three hot meals at catering, and there's not and
right,
it's you got to kind of figure out a lot of things. There's no buses taking you to the remote shoot.
right.
There's no it's like everything is pretty much like there's gonna be things that are gonna come at you that are not related to making makeup or your creatures or whatever. And what and going into that, like, what's the most hairy day that you had on independent film where you were just like, you know what, man, maybe this is it. Maybe I'm done. Like, I don't know.
So I there's two versions. The hairiest, like, oh my god, this is crazy, was we were in the Angeles Crest Forest working on a terrible, terrible movie, and the whole woods caught on fire. Like, and we're putting it out with 2-liter bottles of Shasta soda,
Did
like
you
trying
start
to.
the fire, or was it like started somewhere
No,
else?
a
Okay.
generator blew up because the
Oh
generator,
God.
we were unpermitted, obviously, and we had a generator covered in a ferny pad to keep it quiet while we're trying to shoot. And I mean, I'm not. There was no Griffin Electric. There was an effects guy, a boom camera operator. There was it was a couple guys in the
Yeah.
woods,
I plug stuff
and
into my home outlets. I can do electric, sure.
yeah, sure. And so that was hairy, but that never made me want to say, "Oh, this is over."
Right.
I come from a punk rock kind of skateboard. If there's not a skate park, we make a ramp.
Yep.
Like that ability that a punk rocker doesn't need a record label. They just record some bullshit on a tape and go sell it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my film career as well. The times that made me say, I'm done, I'm through, and I did. I walked away from LA and ran to Florida to try to start a new life outside of the film industry, was just empty promises and lack of respect. I mean, I had done I don't know how many full moon movies on a handshake agreement that I would do the next Puppet Master film, which would have been Axis Rising. And then I was on set of a full moon film called The Dead Want Women. And I found out while I was on set, a good friend of mine, Chris Bergschneider, he's an incredible artist, was already working on the new puppets for Axis Rising. And I got so hurt that I was like, man, I've killed myself for these guys. I've done a lot. And so I packed up that day. I packed up my whole house and I just moved. Like, I was done. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. And then a month and a half into me living in Florida, I got a phone call from Charles Band that said, "Tom, I need you on Puppet Master." Yeah, I mean, so I might have overreacted, but he did come back to me. He said, "This is a workload Chris can't handle by himself. I need you to take the original puppets and recreate them which
Mm.
is all I ever wanted to do ever. And from there, I've done now 3 Puppet Master films, and I understand how much of an emotional decision that was rather than a tactical decision. But I felt like I
Sometimes
couldn't get any respect, you know?
sometimes that's the important thing, right? I think that you it sounds like you drew a boundary, right? And you said
Yeah,
this is the line, you crossed it, I'm out. And I think when
yeah.
people get are have their boundaries declared and are able to express themselves, sometimes it takes an emotional decision to make you say this is enough and I'm not going to do anything until something changes. Or sometimes it's just too much entirely, and maybe you wouldn't, maybe you'd driven away entirely, but I think it sounds like it turned out in a great way that you established that
I
boundary, and then
think
you get to work on the thing you wanted.
it was even better because coming back to the company after kind of being pissed off, and I don't know how much Charlie knew that that's why I left Florida or went to Florida. I don't know, but he did call me and not apologize, but he offered me a job with some solid resources for once, which was not normal. And
If somebody picks up
so
and just
with
bounces
that,
to Florida, that's a serious something really
yeah.
happened. I mean,
So he going back to the company and being a part of the rest of the next couple of years, um, it was like I earned the respect because if anybody knows Charles Band, horror fan wise, everybody's dude, effects dude. They don't have names because he knows too many people and he doesn't care to get comfortable with people. But
right.
from that point on, I was Tom Devlin. That's Tom Devlin. Tom Devlin here, guys. Tom Devlin. Tom Devlin.
Oh
And all of a
wow.
sudden, I'm not dude. I wasn't effects dude anymore. So I took like that step, and I think it was necessary because although Charlie can be a difficult producer to work with because he does his job great. He's very cheap and he gets the stuff done fast. He's an incredible director and an incredible person. He has treated me and my family and also my team very, very well over the years. Times that I've had people out on Full Moon Films for free because there's just not money in the budget, but we want to make a good product. And he'll walk around at the end of the day and make sure everybody's got a couple $100 in their pocket. And it's like that's something you don't see from the cheap producer. And the
Right.
stories of Charles Band. People don't talk about the parts where he is like actually appreciates what we do for him, and I consider him family. You know.
Well, there's producers that do and there's producers that don't, right? And he sounds like one of the ones that do. I think it's important to note that like there's things there's cancellation fees and things like that for on time. And there's a lot of
Yeah,
things like that we're looking at now with the COVID stuff. There's a lot of events that are being canceled and everything else. And you notice there's a difference in a pattern between the producers who are very real and the ones that aren't. The ones that are there for the money and just watching the budgets with a line. You'll never get
yeah,
a cancellation fee. You'll never get taken care of for any extra time that you put in after hours. But then
yeah,
those guys that come through and cover everybody and make sure that everyone's taken care of and stop for a minute and listen to somebody struggling with some BS in their life to get them back on track with what they want to do with the day. Those are the producers everyone wants to come back and work with all the time too.
yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
and definitely that is my trajectory. So I went from being a little fanboy of monsters and mayhem, and then I got a good little chunk of exposure to the big budgets, which I never really wanted to be involved with. I wanted to make the Friday the 13th and the Texas Chainsaw Massacres and Puppet
right.
Masters and Toxie, and unfortunately now a lot of the Friday the 13th type movies are huge budgets but not the knockoffs. So I get to work on a lot of the knockoff type stuff, and I think that's fun. I've worked with companies like Full Moon and the Asylum, which are straight to video, like
Yeah.
fast shoots with no money. And then I've
Sci-fi
worked on a
sci-fi
lot of
level.
stuff, Sci-Fi Channel level, and then I've worked on a lot of stuff with independent producers and directors that put their heart and soul into these projects, and those are the ones that I prefer. Is the stuff that people are like, this is my life dream, and I want to create it, and I like to help people create that life dream. But as my life and career has gone, I am less inclined to want to be on productions and on set and away from the family, and that's where the museum comes. It's my home
Sure.
base. It's a place that I can create. It's something that I can share this wonderful art with. Um, that I just want to I just want to make stuff and show people and it's a more instant gratification because I have a huge body of work film wise, the only people that ever talk about it online are complaining about these terrible movies, but they're not seeing the heart and soul that goes into the terrible movies. And then with the Monster Museum, I could put those same characters in the museum and they come out and tell me how phenomenal the stuff is because uh, it kind of cuts out the bad acting, it cuts out the boring lulls in the script, and you get to just look at those cool puppets or those cool creatures. And then when you come out, you're like, oh my God, I just saw all the money shots without having to sit through it. So that's kind of cool. And
Sure.
it really shows off the amount of work that goes into these crappy, crummy
I
movies.
think that's the interesting thing to me, at least. That's the angle that I love the most about looking at these types of museums, is that you get to see the work, like you can see the thumbprint on the work, right? And it's like,
Yeah,
you know where they had to,
literally.
yeah, literally, like you could see,
Yeah.
like you look at something that was film used. I think I was in Japan in the wintertime, and I went to this. They had this Star Wars exhibit that only went around Asia and Asia Pacific, right? And they had some Jabba the Hutt stuff there, and there was this eye casing that you could see, and there's like literally defects that you can see from the handling and the manipulation
Yeah.
of the materials made to use it or used to make it, and it's like, you can. It's a lot more familiar then. It's like you feel like you were there with them a little bit more. You feel like you were a part of the process, or that you at least understand the process a little better.
Yeah.
And if you're a fan of these things, which I would say a lot of those people who are complaining online are really missing the point of some of these films. Uh,
Oh,
it-
yeah.
you know, and if you're a fan of these things, these museums are wonderful to check out. Where's the museum exactly? If somebody wanted to come check it out, right? Like, well, when we are reopened.
We are about 20 minutes off the strip of Las Vegas. So we're in Boulder City, on the way to the Hoover Dam, and it's right on the Boulder City, or yeah, Nevada Highway or Boulder City Parkway. It has two names, but it's right on the way into town. You can't miss it. There's two hearses sitting out front with a big sign. But yeah, 1310 Boulder City Parkway is where it is.
That's awesome. We were, and there's one more thing that I kind of wanted to cover before, I realize you're a busy guy, and I thank you for your time today. Um,
Yeah, no problem.
and so what's your take on Face Off? We talked about this for a minute, and we were talking about a couple of different concepts, and there's some things here because I do a lot of stuff with video games. I work with a lot of cosplayers. I work with people who do their own makeup, do their own props. I work with, there's a big, variety of people, from the filmmakers to the kind of the Instagrammers who are into makeup effects and everything else. And we were talking about um, kind of the impact that a show like Face Off had on the industry. What's your take on that? Like, how does that what does it mean
So
to you?
I was for those anybody who doesn't know what Face Off is, it's a reality show that's based. It's kind of like Project Runway for makeup effects. So you're given a challenge, you make a creature, they judge you. There's a panel of judges, and then and it's a series long competition. So I was on season one, and I was on 7 out of 8 episodes. I thought I was going to win the show. And then I like unjustifiably got sent home on a
They were
piece of
wrong.
work
They
that
were
was
wrong.
incredible. They were actually. I mean, it was a beautiful piece. In my opinion, they were wrong. But that's the problem with opinion based judging. There was no scale of like scale of 1 to 10, edges, blending, paint job, technical. Was it was just an opinion base. So they
Right.
told me that it was lacking character, or some crap like that,
Well,
and
and
they
there could
sent
have
me
been
home.
some like personality thing too, where they were like, you know what, the
I
audience
think
likes this girl over here a little bit more than they like Tom, so he's out, and
so.
whatever else.
A lot of politics were involved, and I didn't realize that until farther after the fact. There was a great documentary made by a guy named Joe Castro, and it kind of points out some of the flaws in the system. But that being said, I uh, I was pissed that I lost. So I really thought I was going to win the show. Statistically, I was in the top at that moment. I had only been in the top or the bottom twice, never middle ground. And actually, in that episode, I won the first challenge. So it was like there was no immunity for Tom because they knew I was going to go home. So it was really weird. And however, Fangoria used that makeup that I got kicked off to advertise the show, which I thought was hysterical
Mm.
because all their ads online were like new makeup effects show, and it was a picture of me applying this awesome zombie that I got kicked off on. So I think that's really funny.
That's
And what it
telling. That's
where what
telling.
could where yeah where it worked in my favor that I didn't realize at the time, uh, is I didn't make it to the last episode and lose. I was robbed. So I grew this huge fan following at that time of misfits and punk rockers and people that like were Team Tom and they were pissed. So they
Yeah,
spoke out online, and I actually
they
saw.
become
I'll
your most
never
ardent
forget.
fans ever.
I was in a grocery store in St. Louis when I realized people cared about this show. It was the day after I had got kicked TV. I was in a grocery store, and this girl out of nowhere just goes, "That bitch fucked up," and I thought like schizophrenia, right? And then she just yelled, "You were robbed! You were robbed!" And that girl's name is Ruby Morrow. She's a makeup artist at a haunted house in outside Philadelphia or in Philadelphia, and so I've stayed in touch with her. But it was funny because then I walked out of that grocery store and somebody came out of a bar and they were like, "You were that guy on the show," and it was like all of a sudden, oh my god, people actually watched this show because I was on season one. We didn't know how it was going to
Right.
pan out, and
It
of
was
course,
it was
like
a hugely popular show for that. If people people who
huge.
haven't seen it, Sci-Fi is a good channel and there's a lot of stuff on there. It's obviously it's the original programming that they make is not necessarily as big as like a daytime soap opera, but for
Right.
that genre, for the people who are interested in those topics, Sci-Fi Channel's original programming had a very strong following and was very well received.
It had a huge run. It went for 11 years, I think, and
Yeah.
or 11 seasons, 10 years, 11 seasons, and uh, and now it's canceled and it's over. I didn't play the aftermath very well. Although I was always cordial and friendly to every fan, and I never had a problem signing an autograph. Although I felt weird signing an autograph because, like I spoke to you earlier, to me, effects artists are names in the back of the credits. Like we're not foresight heroes. We're guys that we don't have to dress up and we can have tattoos all over our hands and we can do whatever we want because we're in the back. We're not seen, we're below the line,
Yeah.
and so I it was a real weird thing being, Tom Savini was a rock star, no doubt about it. Tom Savini was the rock star of makeup effects,
But
but
even below
even
the
Rick
line,
Baker.
even below the line,
Yeah.
people. I mean, so in the to clarify for anybody that doesn't know, the below the line, and above the line, it's basically I forget what the exact line is. I think it's like on the budgeting, right? But
On the budget, yeah.
yeah, so it's basically anybody who's hired by the studio as a group of people who can come in and do all of the craft work, and then
Yeah.
all of your executive and all of your decision makers, your directors, producers, senior levels, department heads, all that stuff. Those are people above the line, but even so, there's a lot of more breakout happening right now, and it might be we go back to that internet comment before. I said YouTube is a benefit of a lot of people who want to learn,
It
but I think
yeah.
the internet is actually creating a lot of that too because we see it in video games as well. You see it in a lot of the industries. A lot of the people who were formerly below the line or in the back room doing a lot of the work are finally getting the recognition for the work they do. In particular,
Well, and
voiceover
also
actors.
the behind the scenes on DVDs is kind of where it starts, right? Like
Right.
all of a sudden we see the guy running the camera and we see the boom operator. As an effects artist, when I was a kid and YouTube didn't exist, the internet was barely in its infancy. I got all my effects tips and tricks from a magazine like
Yep.
Fangoria, or the end of a movie was a thing called the Video Zone where they did like a little special features how to before DVD. And the Video Zone was basically the behind the scenes that turned into DVD gold. So I would see, oh man, that's a silicone matrix mold, or oh, I understand what they're doing there, or how I can do a life cast.
Right.
So I mean, we had to like hunt and search, but now you can type in blah 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 how to do a life cast, and you get a
Yeah.
lot of people telling you.
And going back to the
So
old
it's
methods too, right? Like it's definitely one of those things where like you'd have to like follow all of those little tutorials in the behind the scenes and maybe even figure out how to reproduce something on your own, have some kind of like example, and then one day maybe luck out and meet somebody who brings you onto a film and just
right.
mixing blood or something, and then the next thing you know, you're like you're being introduced to the school or something because you've been recognized for your talent, which obviously is the
It's
trajectory that you've seen.
it's exactly how it goes. It's you just have to find this kind of path back then, and now you go to school. You hopefully meet somebody, and hopefully it all works out. Uh, But going back to Face Off, I had no idea how important the show was. I thought it was just a game show. I thought it was weird that that we had fans, because like I'm not a fan of so and so from Price is Right,
Right.
other than Bob Barker. So I didn't understand why they cared about contestants so much, especially ones that lost the show. And it wasn't really until I opened the museum that I realized, which was 7 years after the show had aired, uh, I realized how important that show was to makeup effects. My whole goal is to preserve the art and history of practical effects. Well, you can see the digital effects on an uprise. Face Off comes out, and all of a sudden, practical effects are
Sure.
being. I mean, look at Baby Yoda.
Oh yeah.
It's people are back to practical again in the wave that says that practical effects will never go away entirely. And that show was preserving the art and history. I just didn't realize it because I was there, and I just had no idea. So now I'm a huge fan of the show. I wish it would hit Netflix or something, and I could get that second run at a new group of fans, because being in season one, they'll start with us, and
Sure.
I really wish I could go back and do it over, because I used to get kind of like grumpy about Face Off guys sitting at autograph tables signing autographs, and I'm three tables down trying to sell my Halloween masks. Um, but I understand now that it really made fans happy, and there was a way to capitalize on the popularity that I didn't realize that I had.
Well, the
So
good
yeah,
news is about those shows, I think, and we were talking about it before as well, like with the internet kind of giving you access to that broader net of people. You can. I think one of the things that we find is that there's a lot of room for content. If you make the creative product, people will watch it, because you're going to find
yeah,
that there's people who enjoy it, and there's
yeah,
billions of us on this planet, and we're becoming ever more interconnected and being able to see the things that we like. And for those little weirdos in their rooms that are looking at monster pictures and going, oh, I want to make something like that, they see you who are doing it, and when you were that little weirdo long before, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
now we have this ability to kind of get everybody interconnected, and we can be weirdos together. So there's that.
One of the benefits of the COVID-19 for me is that a lot of people, kids especially, have turned to online school, and they're getting more comfortable at home with online schools. I've
Yeah.
been building an online school for about a year now. It's called Tom Devlin's Academy of Makeup and Monsters. And through this downtime, because the museum is closed, we've used that to get a lot of our footage done. We're just taping demos after demos and doing I have a lot of like speaking stuff in front of a white cyc wall, and uh, lecturing, and
Yeah.
we're putting together all the tests, because it'll be 3 levels. So you can be a hobbyist where you can pick and choose. Say you just want to learn how to make a fake hand, boom, you pick that class. Or if you want a career path with a designated set of classes you must take, and you have to test out of each one before you can move on,
That's
and it
awesome.
ends up with a certificate. So this has given us time and motivation to really press forward with the academy, and get a lot of the work done. So hopefully, when this all clears up, I do convention work almost every month. I'm in a different state at a different convention. I do a lot of celebrity makeups for the conventions, like the guys that play Jason Voorhees. I put them back into their costumes, or
Wow.
stuff like that. So we we go out and do photo ops, and fans come and see it, and they love it, and the guys will sign the photos after. It's really it's the most rewarding to me. I always wanted to work on a Friday the 13th film my whole life, and to get to actually create Jason Voorhees on the guy that played Jason Voorhees, it's a life dream, and it's better to me than doing the movie, because like I
Sure.
said, I don't have to do the makeup 700 times. I just have to put it on once every other month or so.
That's awesome.
But through traveling like that, I always do lectures or seminars, where we talk about the Academy of Makeup and Monsters. And now this will actually give us the time to get the tangible school together, so we can start putting it out there for people.
Well, again, I thank you very much for your time today, Tom, and we'll tell everybody to look in the comments and look in the look in the description for more information about how to follow up on the school and most importantly the museum, to participate in the GoFundMe if you want to help out with keeping the museum open and taking care of all of those we'll call them relics of the industry. And then yeah, and but I think we're getting close to time today. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you might want to do a short mention? Or
No, I'm, as far as the Monster Museum goes, we do have a YouTube channel called the Monster Museum Network. We put out news every week. We have new webisodes coming out that we've been working on also during this downtime. We do a podcast called Midnight at the Monster Museum. I think our season 2, episode 2 dropped yesterday. So once a week we put out a podcast. We put content out constantly for the people that are looking for it.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, if you're looking for great content, go check out the Monster Museum channel, and then also check out the GoFundMe. Take a look in the descriptions for a couple more links to get in touch with Tom and all the stuff that he's involved in. Thank you very much for your time today, Tom. It was great talking with you, and it's a pleasure to meet you and talk about your craft.
Yeah, thanks for having me.